Hello, welcome to HUD's History. Today we're going to be looking at the beginning of World War II. Now, we're not going to get through the whole war at this point, but we're going to see the very beginnings of it. We're going to start here in Europe, where the tensions are high after all of the craziness with the rise of the dictators in certain countries, such as the Soviet Union and in Germany over here and in Italy, which is behind me. And also we have places such as Spain, which are seeing some movement. So we're going to get the beginning of World War II, how it starts, and the domino effects as we go through there. And we'll kind of focus only on the Western part. And then on the next video, we will look at the Eastern part as well as the Mediterranean. And then, of course, we will get into the Pacific, where you have Japan, and Japan is basically taking over a bunch of parts of Pacific, and we'll see how it gets a big turn of events with the United States. So make sure you hit all those videos if you're paying attention and looking for the different World War II ones. But like I said, we're going to start with the beginning of World War II here. So make sure to like this video if you want, and buckle up because we're going to take a look at how this war actually starts. The beginning of World War II is going to share some parallels with World War I. We know that in World War I that it starts in Eastern Europe with Austria-Hungary attacking Serbia, and then the Russians coming in to help Serbia out. They'll attack Austria-Hungary, then go towards Germany, and then Germany, of course, being an ally of Austria, will then attack Russia. So that happened in World War I. Well, in World War II, you're going to see it happen again. You're going to see it start in the eastern part of Europe, but using different players this time. We know that Hitler had made his way around Europe, basically taking little parts here and there, Czechoslovakia, Austria, the Rhineland, and he had made a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union and Stalin, basically saying that if he were to go into Poland, that they would not resist, they would not attack. And actually, he made a side deal with Stalin where he says, I will take the western part of Poland, you will take the eastern part of Poland, and then we'll both have parts of our old empires, because Poland was actually created out of land that was lost after the Treaty of Versailles, and they'd only been technically in existence for about 20 years. And unfortunately, then they're gonna be overrun. So on September 1st, 1939, the Germans basically take a huge military with planes as well as tanks, and they just go over the border of Poland towards Warsaw. Now, the reason for it is that they claim that Polish soldiers had fired upon a German radio station on the border. This was not true. This was just propaganda to make it look like that the Germans were just taking this as an act of war, military conflict, and so they were just reacting in kind. So the Germans take their force and swiftly move across the border in a blitzkrieg. If you know what a blitz is in football, it's where the defensive back quickly takes off towards the quarterback in the backfield. It's called a blitz. It's based on a blitzkrieg from the Germans. So the Germans are coming in from the west, and the Polish thought that they were going to have some help from the Soviets because they are alike culturally and ethnically in a lot of respects. However, that is not the case, because a few weeks later, the Soviets actually come in from the east and get a foothold on eastern Poland, which then sets them up to invade the Baltic states, which they had lost after World War I, specifically Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So they're now taking those states back and incorporating them into their Soviet socialist republics. So we have Poland here, unfortunately. It's being invaded by two sides and controlled by the fascists on one side, the communists on the other. When this happens, that's going to cause all sorts of chaos, and it's going to start a new chain reaction of war in Europe. We see German troops, I should say, marching into Warsaw here. They were welcomed in some areas as liberators and heroes. Other places, not so much. You can see pictures of people crying, people waving, and then when Hitler actually drives into it, you will see people waving to him as well. It's kind of crazy, but the Germans waste no time because they do have such a monster military to go in and quickly take down the very weak Polish forces because, again, they're only about 20 years old, and so their government is not very strong. And the fact that they have to deal with not only an attack from their western border by the Germans, but then they're also going to have to face a Soviet military on their eastern border. So, unfortunately, the Polish are not going to have a fighting chance whatsoever. So that happens on September 1st. By September 3rd, 1939, the French and the English see what's going on. They declare war on Germany very quickly, and they know that they're going to have to do some massive movement of troops very quickly. Now, in World War I, the Germans had the Schlieffen Plan, which was that if you had to fight a two-front war, you would have to you would move your troops to the weaker side, a weaker opponent, defeat them, and then move them to their side. Hitler realizes what had happened in World War I, so what does he do? He had made that treaty with Soviet Union, so he does not have to worry about fighting a two-front war. So he already has troops moving to the western side of Germany to the border of France. The French and the British are moving troops into position on what's known as the Maginot Line, which had been created after World War I because that was supposed to deter the German aggression. Now, mind you, Germany's not supposed to have an air force. They're not supposed to have a navy. Hitler has decided to basically rip up the Treaty of Versailles and say, we're going to build a huge military and no one's going to stop us. And because the League of Nations had no enforcement policy, no one stops them. So there are a lot of problems that come about because of the Treaty of Versailles and with the League of Nations, and we know that there is nothing that's going to stop any of these totalitarian societies from dominating unless you get some force in there, and no one had force going up against them at this point. But now that Germany is invading these places, the French and the English realize, we have to do something. So that's what they're going to do. Here is the Maginot Line that is in France on the border. If you look at the map, the red dots are supposed to be the different bunkers on the Maginot Line. The problem is that there is a lot of space between these bunkers. And because they're from World War I, they are meant to hit things that are slow moving. Well, we are 20 years into the future now, and the technology has increased, tank speed has increased, movement of troops has increased. So these bunkers are kind of irrelevant at this point. They don't really do the job they're supposed to. And the Germans are basically just going to walk between them and start making their way into France. So they start pushing into France. France had this false sense of security. Now they have to worry about the fact that the Germans are just coming into France. They are hoping that the British will have enough reinforcements to help defend and push the Germans out like they did in World War I. Here's a tip. It's not going to help them. So Germany starts going into France, but not only are they going into France, they're also taking a detour and going north. So they're kind of splitting their forces into two ways. You have them going west into France, but they're also going north into Northern Europe. So first they hit Denmark. Now, that's not going to be terribly hard because Denmark is small. They actually defeat them in about 4 hours. That's 4 hours. By May and June, the Germans have taken over a lot of different territories, a lot of different countries in Western and Northern Europe. That includes Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. I know Belgium and Luxembourg are not the biggest places, but still, they're taking them over. So now you have the Germans basically setting up camp in all these different places. Particularly looking at Norway, it's an interesting spot because look at where it's at, look where Denmark's at, and who is the greatest threat going to be once you get rid of France? Right? You got Great Britain over there. So this kind of becomes an important area for the Germans to have, because they're going to be able to set up their launches if they want to attack Britain later on. So as these attacks are going on, the Germans are pushing further into France. As they move their way across France towards the ocean, they're going to come into battle with British and French soldiers. Unfortunately, they are underestimating the strength of the Nazi military, and because of that, they have to start retreating. The Germans are so powerful that they start pushing them back. They end up getting them to a little town called Dunkirk on the waters of the British Channel, the English Channel, and there's like this concern that you're going to get a wipeout of a ton of troops. So what does Britain do? Britain ends up saying, okay, all vessels that are available, you need to go across the English Channel. You need to rescue all these troops. So in essence, about 850 or so vessels make their way across the English Channel, and they will form what's known as the largest sea rescue operation ever recorded. If you want to see a good movie about this, it's called Dunkirk, and it's got a lot of very well-known actors, and even there's a singer in there from One Direction. If you go in there and you watch that, it is not big on dialogue, and that's okay, because it is showing the events that took place and what happened there at Dunkirk and this operation that was needed, which was really important because you did need to get those officers and those troops back to England, because they're going to have some valuable information being alive rather than just being dead. This operation is going to take place from May 26th to June 4th, over a couple of weeks, basically about 10 days. And then by the time you get to the middle of June, there's no resistance anymore in France. That means that France is going to fall to the Germans. So the Nazis have now taken over France, and the northern part of France becomes Nazi France. The southern part of France becomes what's called Free France, even though it's not really free. They set up what's known as a Vichy government. All it is, it's a government that is a puppet government controlled by the Germans. So France is not free in any sense of the word. Spain is not a problem because you have a fascist who is over in Spain ruling, and the Italians and Germans had sent in some help there when they had their Spanish Civil War anyway, so there's really no concern that Spain's going to pose any problems to the Nazis going into France. The other thing that happens in 1940 is that Tokyo officially joins the Rome-Berlin Axis, so then you will have the Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan. That's going to take place, and you now have this evil Axis where these three dictator rulers are going to use their power and totalitarian governments in order to make life miserable for a lot of people. All right, so we've talked about the Germans going westward, going northern. Now who's the big one that's left for them? That's going to be Great Britain. The Battle of Britain begins in September of 1940. Hitler has his Luftwaffe, which is the German Air Force, start to bomb Britain from bases in France, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, and in Norway. It is going to hit a lot of major cities, including London, but there's going to be some good breakthroughs that are going to help the British resist against the Germans. Now, you got to remember, if the Germans wanted to do a full invasion, they would have to come across the English Channel. That takes a lot of resources and a lot of manpower to invade. So it's very hard. So Hitler thought that they could just basically dominate from the sky and take over the British island that way. But there are two things that are going to help out the British and the Allies. One's going to be radar. Radar comes into existence, and they're going to be able to use that to start tracking incoming vessels, basically the airplanes. And so that alerts them to when there's going to be an attack. They also are able to get a hold of an Enigma machine. This is the German machine that sends messages through code. They're able to get the Enigma machine and use it in order to crack the code of what's going on with the Germans. So that's pretty cool. Germany's going to try some night raids as well to do some more destruction. But the British do something that's pretty ingenious. What they do is they'd use these big spotlights when the night raid started in order to try and track the flights coming in and the bombers. So what they do is they take some of these searchlights and they put them out in the middle of the forest and shine them at night. What this does is it forces the Luftwaffe to those areas because they think that that's where the city is. The rest of the cities, or the cities I should say, they all turn their lights off so that it's complete darkness at night. By turning on the searchlights, that brings the Luftwaffe to them, and they think they're bombing the cities when they drop their bombs. Actually, they're not. They're bombing the countryside and the forest. So that's pretty ingenious by the English. The use of air sirens is going to help people be ready to head to the subway shelters because they're going to use that for their sheltering when these bombings attacks happen by the German Luftwaffe. This is the London Tube, the subway system that they use. You can see it's being used as an air raid shelter. All the people, the population that's there. A lot of countries do this and have these set up as their emergency shelters in case of an air bombing, air attack by an enemy. The Royal Air Force is going to become one of the biggest pieces of the fighting at this time because they're going to get up there and they're going to start fighting the Luftwaffe. They become very good at it, and they will take down a lot of the German Air Force, which basically destroys a lot of resources that the Germans have and is going to force Hitler into a decision. This is Prime Minister Winston Churchill. He will become the new prime minister after the Conservative Party wins the majority in parliamentary elections that are being held in the middle of war. His policies are not going to be the same as his predecessor, Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain was horrible. He just wanted to appease Hitler, and that's why Hitler went into Czechoslovakia and Austria and took the Rhineland, because nobody said no. And when he comes to power, Winston Churchill is known as the English Bulldog because you can see he kind of looks like a bulldog. And he has this tenacity, aggressiveness. He talks about fighting, that they will fight anywhere and everywhere to prevent the Nazi party and the Nazi regime from taking over Great Britain. After about a year of blitzes, Hitler realizes that he has wasted a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot of manpower, and Great Britain is still standing. So he decides in May of 1941 to call off the attacks, and he will then turn to the Eastern Front. He's going to join with Italy in Southern and Eastern Europe to try and continue the expansion of what he calls the Third Reich, which is the German government and what they call the German Empire. So what are some of these initial effects of these first years of the war? Well, Germany's going to occupy a lot of land. As you can see on the map, they occupy land in Western Europe, in Central Europe. They even control Norway, which is in Northern Europe. There is a loss of major resistance because of the fall of France, meaning there is going to be a hard battle to come. It is now harder to attack these Nazi-occupied territories because where do you attack from? You have to attack from the sea, and that is one of the hardest things to do in order to push back an enemy. You can see Italy's dominating Southern Europe. They're also going to dominate over in the East. And the Soviets, who are no friend of anybody, and really they're not friends with the Germans, but you know, they kind of want to do their own thing. they're controlling the Baltic Sea. Um, and now Hitler, because he has the fall of France and he's got this treaty with the Soviets that they're not going to attack him, he literally has no fear. And there's no place that anybody can attack his Nazi territory. That's how he looks at it. And because of this, when he turns his attention to the east, he's going to start changing tactics and what he wants to do. And that's going to start to change the direction of the war. And we're not even to where the United States is involved yet. The United States is just off being isolationist, doing their own thing. But they'll eventually get in there. And when we get to that part, you're going to see the U.S. come in. And of course, the United States is going to fight, kind of everywhere because they have to. So that is the effects you see from the very first parts of World War II and what takes place because of it. That is the beginning of World War II. There are going to be other videos that will go about the eastern part of the war in Europe, as well as the Mediterranean. And there's also going to be videos on the Pacific and how the United States gets involved. So keep your eye out for those videos as well. If you like this video, make sure that you like it and you subscribe so you can see other videos that come about if you're studying for any of your tests or for the national exam for AP. Social tip for the day, be aware of people when you're out and about, and that people are trying to make themselves better in whatever respect, whether it is by reading more, by learning, by being at the gym, and that you don't have to basically put people down just because they don't necessarily know how to do something. Show them how to do it, or be there to support them. It's easier to lift somebody up than it is to put them down. It'll also make you feel better, and it'll probably brighten someone's day and put a smile on their face. So until next time, this has been Hud's History. I'm Mr. Hudson. I will talk to you guys later. Peace out.